you're ready to explore the Hebrew roots of your Christian faith, then grab your Bible and let's get started.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back on this Sabbath day for the Sabbath day teaching. I praise Yehovah for another day that He has given me. I praise Yehovah for all the work that He is doing that I see, and even the works that He's doing that I don't see, because it is He that's on the throne. It is He that's leading and guiding our lives, at least should, by the Holy Spirit that was given to us, that was upon His Son Yeshua, that now should be guiding our life. I just want to take a moment to praise Jehovah for the little things that He is doing for me, that I realize that even the dreams that come to pass, it is He that is leading my life. As much as people think they're leading their own lives, He is most definitely in the midst of things. So I just want to thank everyone who's able to join me live, and of course those who's going to be joining me on the replay. So we are in the book of Acts. We're in chapter 27. That's very significant because that means we only have one chapter to complete. We are going to complete Acts 27 on today, and it's entirely. I know there's like 44 verses, but we are going to complete it. Now, getting ready for this chapter. Now, this chapter is Paul on his journey to Rome. Now, this journey takes unexpected twists and turns, fierce winds, crashing waves, and almost costs the grip of it does cost the grip of a ship in the midst of a storm. But who makes it? Do they all make it on this journey? Will the sea calm things down, or how do they make it to the journey? So Acts 27 is a test of your faith that we see written for Paul and those who are on a journey with him. And as his destiny continues to unfold, because we know that Yeshua told him he will be going to Rome to testify. So most definitely we're going to go through this chapter and see how he makes it on his way there once we get to chapter 28. Excuse me. But it is the real battle against the storm or something greater. How can we see ourselves in Acts 27? Welcome to Reconcile the Kingdom, where we're working towards growing in a harmony of the whole word of truth. My name is Patrice Robinson. Once again, I'm thankful for all of you who's able to join me live and those who will be joining in the replay. Like I said, this book of Acts, this has been a true journey from chapter 1. Here we're on 27, verse by verse. I think we began this journey April of 2024 when I looked on the calendar. Don't know which day, but it was most definitely in April of 2024. So I appreciate every last one of you who's been sticking through this journey. Now, if you're a visitor and you missed all the chapters and verses that we've been through, you don't have to worry about it. It's an entire playlist that's available for you to sit and study with me as I was going through this journey. So I want to take a moment to thank all of you who's actually been on this journey with me, all the returning subscribers. I want to say thank you, and I greatly appreciate your comments, your questions, sharing the link, and giving the thumbs up, because most definitely we're trying to reach the nations to help them understand biblical doctrine without the tradition of man. I'm going to raise this up a little bit more. So this is the journey that this ministry is on. And I also want to thank new subscribers, all those who joined in. Welcome to the family. Thank you for your support. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for allowing me to be before you. Now, I don't want you to be shy, because I want you to do the same thing as the returning subscribers did. As they do. They make comments, they share the links, they give a thumbs up. And, you have the opportunity to do that always, even in the replay. So I want to thank you as new subscribers, and don't be shy. Also want to address the visitors. Now, this channel do get plenty of visitors, and I appreciate you for visiting and take the time to join me. But I'm also encourage you to hit the subscribe button. There's many of you who do watch and don't hit the subscribe button. So please take a look and make sure that you hit that subscribe button and join this family that does not mind challenging the religious system teachings that we have been under for hundreds of years. A family that's open to being a lifetime student of the Bible, and that you're ready to explore the Hebrew roots of your Christian faith. Not walking in fear, because Yehovah did not give us a spirit of fear. That's not what he's given us, And this is how when you experience the fear and all that type of stuff, examine it. Why are you fearful? Get to the root to it. So I'm also encouraging you to hit the subscribe button. And of course, don't forget the bell, because that lets you know when I'm live, any updates or anything, and announcements too. Now, just like we spoke to return subscribers, just like we spoke to the new subscribers, all the new family members that came in, I'm speaking to the visitors, encouraging hitting the subscribe button, making comments. Even if you disagree, that is okay. But we know how we can make statements respectfully in a disagreement. There's a way to speak to each other, even if you disagree. I have to say that because so many people struggle with that, what we would call that balance of emotions. Now, share the link, give a thumbs up. All those are highly important in the way we move the ministry towards growth. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Spotify, YouTube, podcasts. And I know it's hard for many people to come on this channel, especially from denomination, non-denominational religious systems. And we go verse by verse, and it challenges what they've been taught, whether it's from their pastors, the teachers, whoever it is, and have to examine what is written versus what is someone is telling you. And we should stand on what is written. And those of you who are interested in the workbooks, the worksheets, and the scripture wall arts, you can find all that in the RK SC Biblical Studio, and that's available 6 days a week, and not on the Sabbath day. And please honor that, and also on the annual feast, they always come up. Now, all this information, including the cash app as a love drawer to give a love donation, is there available for you, what we call the love drawer. And it's all this information, again, is in the description box. And you take a moment of your time, and find some way to support the ministry. Subscribing, commenting, sharing the link, thumbs up, all those type of things. Joining me on Facebook, all these other things, Pinterest, and I forgot TikTok. I still have not put TikTok on here because I've been going back and forth with that. But these are ways you can support the ministry. You don't have to always give in the love drawer, although every dollar is helpful. So what does that do? That helps better cameras. It helps with better tools, research materials, and things like that I purchase to make sure that I am researching everything that I share with you. So this is the purpose of all the things that I'm asking you and ways to support the ministry. Once again, you can take a look at that at your own timing and find some way that you can support the ministry. There's always ways you can support the ministry. Now, I don't want you to forget, at the end of the teaching, you have opportunity to ask questions about what's presented to you today. And I encourage, once again, to ask those questions. And I also encourage you to send comments. Now, I will share the questions in the comments as they come at the end, so I can address those, and I would just allow them to flow. And sometimes, especially with comments and things like that, I share throughout the teaching. Now, what you should have in front of you is a Bible, all the writing utensils you need, and if you purchase the workbook or the worksheet, thank you. If you don't have those items, please have a piece of paper before you. Now, I do want to, I did receive a question recently about the Bible that I use. So the Bible that I'm using for the book of Acts is, the version I'm using is the New American Standard Bible. And I've basically been using the New American Standard Bible quite a while here, even when we went through the book of Exodus, because I find that using the New American Standard Bible and not the King James Version while I am teaching, people will understand better. Now, when I am doing my studies and even my research, I use mainly the King James Version. Then I will read it in different versions, because this is how sometimes I'm able to share with you what version, depending on what version you have, is depending on what has been said. So that is the Bible that I normally use when I'm sharing with others, that New American Standard Bible. Now, Bibles are now electronically. You don't have to have the book in front of you, but you can have it electronically in front of you. Now, what we normally do is go over the previous teaching, which was chapter 26. I'm going to pull my sheet from my workbook, and we're just going to go over this for a moment here. And this, again, this is Acts chapter 26. At this moment in Acts 26, we have King Agrippa who arrived. And so he wants to hear from Paul. Now, Paul gets the opportunity to go before King Agrippa. And of course, the other officials was there. Festus, and the other ones were there. This is this is an important part of Paul's testimony. It's because King Agrippa had deep knowledge of the Jewish customs in the controversies, because King Agrippa's mother is of the Jewish faith. So he was raised and taught into all this information. So Paul knew who King Agrippa was. He knows the history of who he is. And this is why Paul's also able to say to King Agrippa and all the other officials that the Pharisees, the Sadducees, all these people who's here coming against me know me. They've been knowing me in my youth because I was well known. I was taught under Gamaliel. This is why I added Acts 22:3 in the cross reference, so you can understand how did they know Paul through his youth. Now, Paul was giving his testimony about the road of Damascus as he was going in the shining light, how the fellows that were with him along with Paul seen the light, but only Paul had the ears to hear Yeshua and the rest did not. Through all of that, he understood. He was telling King Agrippa that I once opposed Yeshua of Nazareth, believing it is his duty to persecute Yeshua's followers. So he was able to testify how he was before. Remember, he was out in prison. He was cheering for the death of the followers and things like that. This is why many did not trust him in the beginning. But Yeshua also explained to Paul himself that I'm rescuing you from the Jews and the Gentiles, but I'm rescuing you from them, but you are going to reach the Jews and the Gentiles. So I'm sending you back out there. And so what is the message? What is the message that Paul has to say to the people? The message is Paul came to open the eyes so they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to Elohim, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among those who have been sanctified by the faith in Yeshua. So this is Paul's message. This is Peter's message. This is Timothy's message. This is Mark's message. This is John's message. This is our message of the kingdom. How do you put yourself in the scriptures? So I have my cross-reference. I did not share any word study during our teaching. That does not mean, remember, that does not mean that you do not do your own word study, because actually if you do word study, it will take your studies deeper. I have questions. I have two questions I'm going to share. Like Paul, are you willing to boldly stand for the truth of Yeshua, even in the face of opposition? So Paul's been standing up on the understanding of who Yeshua is, was, and will always be, the Messiah. What holds you back from sharing your testimony? How can you overcome those obstacles? Because some people, is it embarrassment? It's difficult for some people to share their testimony, which leads me to my application and insight. We are called to share our testimony, walk in obedience to Elohim's calling, and shine his light in a world that needs him. The world needs him. The world truly needs him. And what is our message? To open the eyes so they may turn from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan and Elohim, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among those who have been sanctified by the faith in Yeshua. This is our duty. The message is that the Messiah has come. Now, my recommended study comes from Exodus chapter 3. Interesting. The reason why I chose that passage is because if those of you who join me on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock p.m. as we're going through the Torah studies, that's the 5 books of Moses for some people, or the Pentateuch for some people, those first 5 books. So right now we're in the book of Leviticus, and I believe it's chapter 11 that we will be on Tuesday night. But going back to Exodus chapter 3, is that this is Moses' call. He received his call so that he may open the eyes, that they may turn from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to Elohim, that they may receive forgiveness of sin. They received salvation from the wrath of Yehovah. It's the same thing that Yeshua came so that we may walk like him, that we will most definitely avoid the wrath of Yehovah being poured upon us in the book of Revelation. So this is why I chose Exodus chapter 3. Now, I'm going to leave my sheet up for a moment to give you opportunity to ask questions and make comments, and give you opportunity to also even put some word study, anything that you feel that would be needed for the community, that we can learn from one another. So I'm going to get straight into Acts chapter 27. And now when it was decided that we would sail for Italy, they proceed to turn to Paul and some other prisoners over to a centurion of Augustine's cohort named Julius, and was brought it at Adramyttian ship that was about to sail to the regions along the coast of Asia, and put on to sea accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian, and of Thessalonica. The next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul with consideration, allowed him to go to his friends and receive care. So Paul received favor. From there we put out to sea and sailed under the shelter of Cyprus, because the winds were contrary. And when they had sailed through the sea along the coast of Sicily and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. There, the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy, and he put us aboard it. And we had sailed slowly for a good many days, and with difficulty have ride of Sindus, since the wind did not permit us to go farther, we sailed under the shelter of Crete, a Salmoni. And with a difficulty sailing past it, we came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lycia. So in this passage, in the beginning, Paul, along with the other prisoners, were placed under custody of a centurion named Julius and set out to Italy. Okay, so they was coasting along, Sidon. And of course, at that moment, Paul was able to visit some friends. Now the journey continues. There were strong winds forcing them to go to Cyprus for shelter. Struggles against the wind passed through waters of Sicilia and Pamphylia, eventually arriving at Myra. There they aboard a Alexandrian ship bound for Italy. The voyage remains slow and challenging as they make their way through Cyndias, and due to unfavorable winds, this is the strong winds, sail southward toward Crete, finally reaching a place called Fair Havens. Now, that is basically what's going on now. Is they going through these winds of journey. There's lots of storms that's going in. But if we are paying attention to the scripture, we are hearing this writing from Luke, who's the author, put himself again in the chapter. When he said when we go all the way up back to verse 1, he says, now when it was decided that we would sail for Italy. So Luke is present. All this is important because remember, he's writing a testimony, he's investigating, and he's a part of his own writing because he was present. And also, Aristarchus is also mentioned in this passage, which is a companion of Paul that he writes about in Colossians and Philemon. So it's amazing how we miss all these little details of Paul's writings. Paul is still a prisoner. He's given favor because he's able to get care from his friends. So Paul not only had favor with Yehovah, he also had favor with man. Verse 9, when a considerable time has passed and the voyager was now dangerous, since even the fast was already over, Paul started admonishing them, saying to them, men, I perceive that this voyage will certainly be with damage, great loss, and not only of the cargo in the ship, but also of our lives. But the centurion was more persuaded by the pilot and the captain of the ship than by what was being said by Paul. He didn't want to hear all of that. Who was Paul? The harbor was not yet suitable for wintering, so the majority reached a decision to put out to sea from there if somehow they can reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete facing southwest and northwest, and spend the winter there. When the moderate south wind came up, thinking they had attained their purpose, they weighed anchor and began sailing along Crete closer to the shore. So those of you who are see people who goes and put your boat out, you most definitely will understand about all of this that's going on more than a person who does not regularly get on aboard, which is the one I'm referring to myself. Now, since this harbor of Fair Havens, it is not ideal for wintering, the majority decide to press towards Phoenix, to be a suitable harbor for Crete. When a gentle south wind begins to blow, they assume it's safe to continue and set a sail, unaware that there's a fierce storm is looming around. Now, this can lead to some destructive things, but we'll see what happens because they ignored the wisdom that was coming from Paul. Now, I do want to point out a piece of this passage that people miss. I'm going to read verse 9 to you again. When considerable time had passed and the voyage has now dangerous, since even the fast was already over, Paul started admonishing them. I'm going to point to the word fast. Actually, I should have given you the Strongs, because I think it is important to look up what this fast means, because technically, as a non-denominational religious system person, you will think that this fast is a general fast. This is just a regular fast, but it is not. So I want you to be able to look that up in Strong's, which will be H3521, meaning the Day of Atonement. Fasting, a Day of Atonement. So what we missed is another feast in the Brit Hadashah in the New Testament. I've spoken about this many times, especially as we were going through, and we will continue on through what Yeshua had taught, how much the feast is actually there, but we don't recognize and we don't see them because we do not have any foundation in the scripture. So this is the Day of Atonement, which is Yom Kippur, has passed. That is a day of fasting. So when you see the day of fast or something, in many other categories, you will see, you have to look it up to make sure it lines up, but it's the Day of Atonement. So indicating that this is like the late season or the stormy weather is likely to happen, which is around, if you think about it, the Day of Atonement comes around like September time. And it could be October too, depends on the moon. But this is usually when it comes around, which is in the fall type of wintry weather in that time. And in our time too. Now, Paul warns the crew about proceeding to this voyage could lead to disaster. A great loss can happen with the ship, the cargo, even our lives. And the Centurion chose to trust in the captain rather than listen to Paul's advice. Again, it's important to look up these, do a word study, because if you didn't do a word study, you probably thought, again, the fast was a regular fast, but it's not. It's an annual feast. Verse 14. But before very long, a violent wind called Euquala, rushed down from the land. And when the ship was caught in it and could not head up into the wind, we gave up. This is Luke writing. We gave up and let ourselves be driven by the wind, running under the shelter of a small island called Cuda. And we were able to get the ship's boat under control only with difficulty. After they have hoisted it up, they used supporting cables to undergirding the ship, and fearing that it might run aground on the shallows of Cyprus. They let down the sea anchor and let themselves be driven along this way. The next day, as we were being violently tossed by the storm, they began to judge us to cargo. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. They started throwing things. Since neither sun nor stars appeared for many days. So they still out here in the sea. No small storm was assailing us. From then on, our hope being saved was slowly abandoned. When many had lost their appetites, Paul then stood among them and said, "Men, you should have followed my advice and not set sail from Crete, thereby spared yourself this damage and loss." And yet now I urge you to keep up your courage, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. You would think, how in the world is a ship not going to survive, but we're going to survive? That would be the question that you would have in your head, right? For this very night, an angel Elohim, to whom I belong, who I also serve, came to me, saying, do not be afraid, Paul, you must stand before Caesar, and behold, Elohim has graciously granted you all those who are sailing with you. Therefore, keep up your courage, men, for I believe Elohim that it will turn out exactly as I have been told. But we must run aground on a certain island. So in this passage, it's began with this gentle south wind that gives sailors confidence to continue the journey. But suddenly, a violent storm comes, sweeps down upon them. The ship is caught in the wind's grip, making it impossible to sail against it. So they forced to let it be driven along. As they struggle to continue the ship, they pass near this small island, and they barely managed to secure the lifeboat. In desperation, they reinforce the ship in the ropes, lowering the sea anchor to slow the draft. The storm grows worse. By the next day, they throw in cargo overboard. They want to lighten the load. The third day, they even toss the ship's tackle into the sea. Day pass without sun and stars. The crew lost hope and survival. That sounds like us. Days will pass, months will pass, that we feel like things are not working out the way we thought it should. We don't see any light. How do you trust in Elohim and what he said if you don't see the light? We have to trust into his word. We have to trust in what he says. If he giving you a message, stand on it, no matter what it looks like. See, the kingdom stands on the word, the message that's given to you to do the work or the next steps that he's given to you. It is not bound by the things that's going on around us. I encourage you to hit the subscribe button as you continue with me, studying the scriptures verse by verse, not missing it, not giving you pieces here and there and pacing things together. But verse by verse study is highly important. That's the way you understand the scriptures. So Paul stands up and reminds them, as he's reminding us, that we need to listen to the guidance of the Spirit and the wisdom of the Spirit, which is what Paul was giving them earlier and try to warn them, but they didn't want to listen. But in spite of this despair, Elohim sent an angel to reassure Paul that you are on the right path. Although they didn't listen to you, not only am I going to make sure you survive this, but everyone who's with you will survive. But the ship will be lost. And I'm pretty sure they wonder in their heads, like most of us who's reading it, how in the world is the ship going to be lost and the people going to survive? Paul urges them, as we are urging you today, to keep your courage. Trust in the Elohim and his promises. Verse 27. But when the 14th night came, they still at sea. It's 14 nights later. As we've been driven about in Adrika Sea about midnight, the sailors began to suspect they were approaching some land, and they took surroundings and found it to be 20 fathoms. And a little farther, they took another sounding and found it to be 15 fathoms. Fearing that we might run aground somewhere on the rocks, they cast 4 anchors from the stern, and prayed for daybreak because they needed to see. But as the sailors were trying to escape from the ship and had to let down the ship's boat into sea on the pretense that they were going to lay out the anchors from the bow, Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men remain on the ship, you yourselves cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it fall away. Now, Paul is continuing to encourage the crew, telling them through the ship, although the ship would be lost, they would run aground on an island. Again, the storm rages midnight, they're hoping that a land will approach, taking the soundings, meaning those deep measurements to confirm that the water's getting more shallower, meaning that they're nearing towards a shore. That's all those soundings, those phantoms and stuff that they were taking those sounds to, that land is coming close. Fearing that they might crash on rocks, they throw out 4 anchors from the stern and pray for daylight. However, some of the soldiers, desperate to save themselves, attempt to escape in a lifeboat, pretending to lower anchors from the bow. Paul warns the centurion and the soldier that if these men leave, the rest will not survive. We're going to survive together. This is what Paul is saying. Taking his advice seriously, this time the soldiers cut the ropes, letting the lifeboat drift away, ensuring that everyone stays together until the day, verse 33, until the day was about to dawn. Paul kept encouraging them to take some food, saying, today is the 14th day that you have been constantly watching and going without eating, having taken in nothing. They're eating nothing. Therefore, I encourage you to take some food, for this is for your survival. For not a hair from the head of any of you will perish. They was worried, watching, trying to figure out what in the world we're going to get out of this, instead of being at peace. The Elohim's will be done. Having said this, he took bread and gave thanks to Elohim in the presence of them all, and he broke it and began to eat. All of them were encouraged, and then they themselves also took food. We were 276 people on the ship in all. When they had eaten enough, they began lighting the ship again by throwing the wheat out in the sea. So as dawn approaches, Paul urges everyone to eat, reminding them that they have gone 14 days without food due to fear. Again, that's that fear that cripples us. That's that fear that keeps us from going further. It makes us freeze, or it makes us flee and make the wrong decisions out of those emotions. As a believer, it is not to say you don't feel emotions, because that's a part of it. The emotions is a part of our navigating system. It's let us know something's going on. You as a believer has to evaluate it, not to walk into the fear. Why do I have this fear? And once again, it's about examining why I'm feeling, and how to resolve that issue. So they went without food because they had so much fear, so much anxiety, so much stress, so much worry. They were exhausting themselves, and Paul encouraged them to eat. He assures them that they will all survive because Elohim told them they all going to survive. He encouraged them to regain their strength. Paul set a great example. He takes the bread, gives thanks to Elohim in front of everyone, breaks it and begins to eat. Seeing this confidence, seeing his faith, his belief, his hope that stays in Elohim, encourage others to follow suit and eat well. There were 276 people on the board. One of them being Paul, one of them being Luke, one of them being Archaeus, I always mispronounce his name, and the other. So he's being a leader. He is showing them how to walk in Elohim in spite of the storm that's going on around them. Take hold of the word of Elohim. Either eating, they lighten the ship farther, throwing the remaining wheat into the sea, preparing to hope to run into around, which is they looking for some land to come in, shallow land to come in, a shore to come. So again, you see Paul's leadership showing that faith and inspires hope and actions. He's not just speaking and he's living it before them, even as a prisoner. Verse 39. And when the day came, they could not recognize the land, but they did notice a bay with a beach, and they resolved to run the ship onto it if they could. And casting off the anchors, they left them in the sea, while at the same time they were loosening the ropes of the rooters, and they hoisted the foresail to the wind and were heading for the beach. But they struck a reef where two seas met and ran the ship aground. And the prow stuck firmly and remained immovable, while the stern started to break up due to the force of the waves. The soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners so that none of them would swim away and escape. But the centurion, wanting to bring Paul safely through, kept them from accomplishing their intention and commanded that those who could swim were to jump overboard first, and get to land, and the rest were to follow. Some on planks, others on various things from the ship. And so it happened that they all were brought safely to the land. Here we go. This is daybreak that's happening in this passage. The crew sees a bay, a beach that they don't know what it is. They don't know where they are, but decides to run the ship in the ground if possible to get to that beach. They lose the anchors, untie the ropes, host to foresail to head for shore. However, they strike a sandbar, causing the ship to run aground. The bow gets stuck while the stern is broken apart by violent winds. Now, all this is happening, and the soldiers already have a plan. Their plan is to make sure all the prisoners are killed to prevent anyone from escaping, because they're going to have to answer to Rome. How did you let these soldiers, these prisoners escape? They know what their duty is to do. But because Paul found favor with the centurion wanted to save Paul, and he stops them from killing the prisoners. Instead, he orders those who can swim to jump overboard first, while the rest cling to the planks in the breeze to float to the shore. So at the end of this, Paul and everyone safely reached the land. What a testimony of Elohim's faithfulness in his promises. I'm telling you, this was a testimony that most definitely grew the influence that Paul had. This given an opportunity to testify on the faithfulness, the Elohim who created heaven and earth, how he's always faithful in spite of the winds, the storms, the rains, all those type of things, expected and unexpected things. Paul taught an example and got favor. They didn't listen to his wisdom the first time, but they most definitely listened to his wisdom when he said, don't let them people leave, because we all got to be together. They listen. This chapter reminds us, again, despite of the raging storm, the shipwreck, the looming threat of death, Elohim's promise to Paul is fulfilled. Everyone survives. Even though the soldiers wanted to kill the prisoners, everyone survived. What began as a perilous journey to Rome becomes a testimony of faith, leadership, and divine protection. Yet, Paul's journey is not over. He has arrived assured to an unknown island. So now, when we get to 28, we're going to see what's going to happen next. I want to encourage you. Life storms may be seeming overwhelming. Many of us have been through quite a bit and survived. We have to know that Elohim has a purpose for our lives. But like Paul, we have to trust in Elohim's promises. What he's spoken to you, what he's shared with you, what he's leading you to do, you have a purpose to fill. Will you choose to have faith over fear? For Elohim has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. Stand firm and encourage others. And hold on to his word, because even in the wreckage, Elohim's purpose remains. I want to encourage you and remind you what we are called to do. We are called to open the eyes, helping people turn from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to Elohim, so they may receive forgiveness of sins and place their faith in Yeshua, our Messiah, that we may avoid the wrath of the Father that we read about in the book of Revelation. I'm encouraging you to continue your studies with me. Join me on Tuesday, because again, we on Leviticus chapter 11. And join me next Saturday, on the Sabbath day. We are in Acts chapter 28. Now, we are not going into the annual feast of Passover or unleavened bread or Feast of Weeks at this moment. Those of you who's following me on Instagram knows that we are now in the 13th biblical month. Just want to remind you of why you don't see these teachings coming up or talking about Passover. That is for Instagram. So I'm encouraging you to most definitely follow me there. So don't see any questions or comments that I need to address right now. That does not mean that you can don't send them, because I can receive those during the replay and I'll respond to them then. No need to do any emailing. Just put the information in the description, in the comment box, because you can help someone else who might have the same question or deepen what they thought they understood. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah shine his face on you and give you his favor. May Yehovah shine his face towards you and give you his peace. All in the mighty name of Yeshua. Once again, I thank everyone for joining me on this live. And of course, all of you who's joining replay, do not leave here without hitting that subscribe button. Support the ministry by hitting that subscribe button before you leave on tonight. Oh, today. In the name of Yeshua, thank you.